Melania Trump fell on live TV, but what happened before that was much more stunning than the fall itself. It started off gently, maybe too quietly, in a slick Dallas studio. Before the cameras ever turned on, the tension was already high. Makeup artists looked over their supplies 3 times. The producers talked in whispers, and the interns stood still, not breathing. Everyone knew something was coming, even if they couldn't put their finger on it. Every seat in the auditorium was full at 7:45 p.m. They were live right at 8 o'clock. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat on the right, calm and focused. The crisp white lapels on her blue jacket made it clear that she meant business. Melania Trump sat across from her. She was perfectly dressed, unreadable, and calm. Not a single hair is out of place. There wasn't a single drop of sweat. Terrence Vann, a well-known TV anchor who could make even the most heated arguments polite, sat between them. But what about tonight? Terrence even looked nervous. Here's the catch. No one, not even the studio crew, knew exactly what Jasmine had in the folder that was sitting quietly in front of her. For weeks, there had been rumors, screenshots that got out, mysterious hotel reservations, but nothing had been set in stone until tonight. When Terrence started the presentation, the stage looked like any other panel debate. Melania was the first to speak. She gently talked about trust, leadership, and how the media changes news. Her speech was smooth, like she had practiced it. Then Jasmine said something, and the air changed. "I think people are done with theater," she stated. "They want the truth. And to be honest, they want receipts." The audience didn't clap. They didn't even move. It was one of those times when quiet spoke louder than applause. Melania shifted just a little bit toward Jasmine. "If you're saying something, I hope you're ready to back it up." Jasmine didn't move. "Don't worry. I am." But no one knew what would happen next. Jasmine calmly leaned forward as Terrence sought to move the conversation toward safer waters. She didn't yell. She didn't move her hands. She just asked, "Do you want me to start with the trip to Zurich on March 11th? Or the stay in Marbella on April 6th? Boom. Melania didn't say anything. The crowd stayed still. Terrence let go of his pen, and everyone at home drew in closer. Jasmine went over the entries, which included private plane manifests, customs logs, and information from high-end hotels. None of it matched what Melania had on her public calendar. All of that made me think hard. Melania said, "They're lies." But this time, her voice shook. Jasmine said quietly but firmly, "I have the receipts. The ones you thought would never come out." After that, the show was no longer a conversation. It was an unveiling, piece by piece, of something that had never been seen before. And this is what kept everyone interested. Jasmine wasn't yelling. She wasn't over the top. She was really organized. Every page she took out of her folder was a piece of a puzzle, and the picture was becoming more and more clear. Melania tried to fight back. She said Jasmine was attempting to get attention by dragging a family through the mud, but Jasmine didn't move. She said, "If it's speculation, sue me. But you don't care what I'm saying. You're afraid that people will trust me." And they did. Phones were ringing all over the country. Group chats went crazy. Hashtags started to become popular. People who believed they were seeing a normal interview found out they were actually watching a live, unscripted confrontation. Then Terrence asked a question that shocked the whole country and turned the political drama into a national shockwave. "Are you saying that the First Lady had affairs that weren't made public while her husband was in office, Congresswoman Crockett?" Jasmine stopped. "No. I'm saying that she had secret talks with foreign people who later wanted to invest in U.S. infrastructure when she was in charge, and those meetings were kept secret on purpose. That was all." Melania got up. She said, "You'll regret this," and her voice broke. Jasmine didn't move. "I already wished I had said anything. That's why I'm here now." There was a moment when it seemed like Melania would leave, but something worse happened instead. She stumbled. She reached for the chair behind her with her hand, but missed. Her knees went out. As she slid forward, her mic popped. People in the audience yelled. A stagehand ran in, but it was too late. Melania Trump fell down, live, in the air, in front of a lot of people. Terrence was frozen. Someone in the control booth yelled for the broadcast to be cut, but the camera kept going. Jasmine didn't move, not because she didn't care, but because she realized this wasn't about her anymore. This was more than just one folder, more than one moment. And what is the truth? It had just started to show up. Jasmine didn't move. Not frozen by shock, but by self-control. This was not her time to talk. It had already passed. The room was quiet, but Jasmine's quietness meant something, a way to control. A kind of serenity that doesn't freak out when everything around it goes wrong. An EMT team quickly came in from behind the curtain. It seems like the producers were ready for drama, but not a medical emergency. It was evident that Melania was breathing as they surrounded her, but something wasn't right. Her skin had turned ghastly white. She had her eyes open, but they weren't focused. They moved back and forth, as if she were looking for a wall that wasn't whirling. They went fast and carefully put her on a stretcher. A person in the audience began to cry. The studio, which used to be a space for politics and performances, had changed into something that wasn't vetted. For real. Not staged. Naked. One of the paramedics remarked quietly, "She fainted." It could be a vasovagal response. "We'll take her in for a scan." No one doubted it, but everyone watching knew deep down that this wasn't just tiredness. It wasn't just nerves on stage. It fell apart when it was exposed. The start of something coming apart that had been tightly wrapped for years. A producer went in close to Terrence Van's ear and said something as Melania was being carried away. His face fell. He said to the camera, "We're going to take a short break," not sure if they were still transmitting. The screen went black. But by then, it didn't matter. Phones had caught everything. Clips spread like wildfire. TikTok started to show up before Melania's stretcher even left the premises. Within 7 minutes, Twitter was trending, first in the US, then around the world. Hashtags like #MelaniaCollapse went viral. There were already replays of the live stream going around, slowed down, and broken down frame by frame. Reporters started changing their news stories. Producers on other networks were anxiously whispering into their hosts' earpieces, "Can we confirm this? Did this really happen live?" Voices inside the studio whispered in disbelief. Some people got scared. A few numb. Terrence went back on stage. Jasmine was still. The folder she had was closed. She folded her hands. She didn't smile. She was waiting. "Congresswoman," Terrence replied quietly, "we're going to start again soon. You don't have to stay if things have changed." Jasmine gazed at him with the same calmness she had all night. "I didn't want that to happen," she stated. "But I wasn't the one who was hiding anything." The lights on the ambulance gleamed against the studio glass. Inside, the mood had changed again, this time from tense to heavy. Something that weighs more. Something that will last. Melania's team swiftly put out a statement saying it was a health scare. They said it was minor, because of a busy travel schedule. But no one believed that anymore. Not after what had just happened. The picture had broken. The harm was done. Jasmine didn't say anything else. She didn't post anything. She didn't brag. And what about that silence? It had its own type of sound. People saw it. Her critics did too. One person on Twitter said, "She's not doing this for drama." Someone had to do it. The post got 300,000 shares in less than an hour. Another one went viral. She gave Melania a choice. Melania took a chance that she wouldn't go there and lost. Jasmine traveled back to her hotel in a black sedan without saying a word. Kian, her head of staff, sat next to her and scrolled furiously. "You broke the internet," he said quietly, staring at the screen. "Even TMZ is running with it. They're saying you iced the First Lady without raising your voice," they said. Jasmine looked out the window. Still quiet. They're asking for a response. Everyone. Fox is already making it up, saying the whole thing was fake. She passed out on live TV. Jasmine murmured quietly, "You can't fake knees that are bending." Kian said, "They don't care. They're going to do it anyway." There was a long pause between them. Full, but not weird. "She's coming after us," Jasmine said. "Her or her followers?" "Both." Kian put his phone down. "You still think you did the right thing?" "I know I did." People all throughout the country were watching the scene again and over. People were shaken not only by Melania's fall, but also by everything else that happened around it. How calm Jasmine's voice was. The sluggish showing of revenues. The change from performance to truth. A fact that wasn't merely whispered anymore. It was shown off in front of bright studio lights. By midnight, #CrockettExposes was one of the top 5 trends in the world, along with #MelaniaCollapse. People looked up Jasmine's name more than 8 million times. There were a lot of before and after pictures of Melania on Instagram. One moment she seemed sure of herself, and the next she looked confused. TikTok users lip-synced Jasmine's phrase, "I'm walking the truth, and it's paved with time." Stamps. But one post hit harder than the others. A screen that is black. Text in white. She didn't yell. She set a higher standard. By daybreak, it had 2 million likes. Of course, not everyone was happy. A former advisor to the Trump family wrote, "This isn't bravery, it's character assassination dressed up as justice." Some others dubbed it political theater. A personal grudge. A stunt for the media. But for every angry tweet, 5 more thanked Jasmine for being calm. Her calmness. Her refusal to show off. She still didn't answer. Not a tweet. Not a press release. Nothing. She was waiting. She knew that the facts would speak louder than anything she could write. And then they did. Emails started to leak before the sun came up. The first one came without a name and was sent to a freelance journalist in Phoenix. The subject line said, "Zurich. I'm Marbella." She wasn't by herself. There were 2 PDFs attached, email conversations from 2021 to early 2023. They talked about schedules, room service requests, and working with a European security staff. One line that stood out was, "Don't put her name on the manifest this time." The same rules as Marbella. By 9 a.m., all the big stores had the files. CNN, Reuters from Reuters, Buzz2Go, all of them said they had gotten them. Melania's public relations team was in a hurry. Lawyers were going in circles. But 15 minutes after Melania's speech, in which she called the claims false and defamatory, a blurry hotel security video appeared online. It showed 2 people getting into an elevator at a hotel in Zurich. One was wearing a long white coat. The second one wore sunglasses and a baseball cap. The timestamp was the same as the one in the customs log that Jasmine had read about on the air. And what about the woman in white? How she stands, the bag she had, the shoes she wore. All of the public images of Melania from earlier that week were the same. The internet put the pieces together. Melania had postponed her intended trip to Palm Springs around lunchtime. A close friend turned off their Twitter account. People were whispering at Mar-a-Lago, "Lay low. No press. Get back together." This wasn't just a physical breakdown. It has to do with reputation. At the same time, Jasmine was alone in her office, looking over papers, one by one. No press team. No group of people. She was alone with her laptop. Kian came in. He responded, "One of your old aides just spoke off the record. She was in Marbella. Took care of the hotel reservation." Jasmine didn't move. "Does she have any papers?" An invoice. It has her name on it. Jasmine let out a breath, not in relief, but with calmness. Hey, make an appointment for her. Personal statement. No press. Only sound. Put a timestamp on it. What about legal problems? Jasmine said she won't say anything that can't be checked. We're not going after character. We're showing patterns, because it was never truly about the affairs. Not for Jasmine. It was about getting to it. About power. About the people who are in powerful places but seldom make the news. Up until now. People in the U.S. weren't simply watching a scandal. They were also watching a map being made. A map of how a political image may protect you, how silence becomes money, and how one woman, with a soothing voice and a folder full of dates, started to pull it all back. And the most frightening part? She was just getting started. Cable news anchors rushed to make changes. The way they talked altered. They changed the words they used. The talk changed from fashion and the former First Lady's appearances to international leverage, possible compromise, and conflicts of interest. People were talking about Melania Trump for the first time in years, but not because of her clothes or marriage. And at the center of it all was Jasmine Crockett, who hadn't said a word since the night everything changed. She was being quiet on purpose, ready, disruptive. But not everyone agreed with that. Jasmine's security consultant detected an email that came in late that night. Melania's lawyers sent a cease and desist letter. The paper said Jasmine had hurt someone's feelings, invaded their private, and made them feel bad. She opened it, read the first page quickly, and then deleted it. Should I be worried? Kian asked, worried. She shook her head. You don't sue people when they're telling the truth. When they tell you too much of the truth, you sue them. He nodded, but he didn't seem to feel better. This isn't over. Jasmine said, I don't need it to be over. I just want it to stay true. But the narrative took another turn before she could make her next move. And this time, it wasn't Jasmine who said it. It originated from Melania's side. A white envelope with the U.S. government seal on it was hand-delivered to Jasmine's district office in Dallas. There was a subpoena inside. She was going to have to testify in Washington, D.C. Most famous people would have freaked out. Jasmine? She held the paper, read the return address, and stated quietly, there it is. Kian looked at her. Jazz, that's real. You're being drawn into a federal investigation. I know, she responded as she put it in her bag. That's why I'm not avoiding it. 2 days later, she sat in front of a congressional subcommittee. There were cameras all around the back of the room, like silent guards. Microphones sat in front of her like birds ready to attack. Some of the people across the table were members of Congress, some of whom were already unfriendly. They didn't try to hide how much they hated them. The chairperson cleared his throat. Jasmine Crockett, Texas 30th Congresswoman. He remarked, we're not here to go over the headlines again, but to understand what your actions could mean for the country as a whole. Do you get it? Jasmine leaned closer, her voice steady. I do. The attacks happened quite rapidly. A congressman said she was working with foreign spies. Another person said she had used personal issues as weapons to gain political power. Jasmine let them talk. She didn't say anything. She didn't even blink. Then she spoke when the floor opened up to her. She started by saying, I sat on this information for months. Not because I didn't think it was important, but because I knew what would happen as soon as I spoke it out loud. People would say I was emotional, spiteful, taking advantage of opportunities. So I waited until I could check every single allegation. Stop talking. I didn't bring this up to hurt anyone, she said. I brought it up because prominent personalities aren't just people. They have power. People have a right to know if that impact is being shaped behind closed doors. A few heads moved. They wouldn't say it out loud, but they had more regard for her than they would let on. That night, Jasmine sat down for her first on-camera interview since the panel. No drama. No dramatic lighting. There were only 2 chairs, gentle lights, and a journalist named Darlene Rowe with a quiet voice. Darlene asked, "I have to ask, did you think it would go that far? That you would fall apart?" Jasmine didn't blink. "No. I thought they would say no. I thought there would be spin. I didn't think her body would do what her words wouldn't." "Did you feel bad about it later?" A break. Then a breath. "Yeah, not for what I stated, but how much noise people are ready to put up with to keep things nice. That's what scared me." The next question hit harder. "Some people say that this was the end of politeness in politics and that you went too far." Jasmine smiled a little. "You mean the line between what we know and what we say?" After that, she looked straight into the camera. "I believe we went over that line a long time ago. I merely showed them the receipt. That video? By midnight, it was viral. Not for her performance, but for the calm confidence in her voice, because she spoke like someone who didn't need the spotlight, only the truth." Kian nodded to her backstage. "You changed the room's temperature," he said. "They'll try to spin it." "Sure," he said with a shrug, "but they're not the only ones who are watching." He was correct. Colette Baines was watching that interview in a tiny townhouse in Alexandria, Virginia, a person who used to work for Trump. Age 42. 3 people signed NDAs. Loyal, quiet, and effective. Once spotted behind Melania at a gala in Brussels where no one could see them. But what about now? She was sitting in a quiet office with a microphone connected to her collar and looking into a camera that was protected. "I don't want money," she said. "I want space. And I want the truth written down the way it really happened." She drank some water. Breathe out. She lied. A lot. About where she went. Who she met. And it wasn't just random. It was planned. "I made her travel plans through fake businesses. I signed NDAs for her." The reporter leaned in. "Why now?" Colette's voice was soft. "Because Jasmine Crockett reminded me how much silence costs." The interview was made public in parts. Colette's second video went public within 48 hours. This time it had screenshots of travel plans made under fake names, a driver's testimony from Spain, and internal messages. The names were hard to read, but that wasn't the case. The interviewer questioned, did Melania ever work with foreign investors who wanted to have an impact in the U.S.? Colette didn't move. Yes, and not simply in a social way. That one line made more noise than anything Jasmine had ever spoken. Because now, it wasn't simply what Jasmine said. It was emanating from the inside. Melania's lawyers quickly pushed back, saying that Colette was an unhappy worker with an agenda. But it didn't work. Colette didn't look like she wanted revenge. She seemed exhausted, worn out, truthful. The wave continued becoming bigger. A second staff member, who didn't want to be named, corroborated a similar pattern. In Vienna, a vacation that Jasmine hadn't posted about until now, in 2022. Newsrooms went crazy. Talk shows asked ethicists to come. Financial specialists found the shell businesses. One of them had offered 7 figures to digitize government infrastructure, but then they backed out after Congress asked them to. The parts of the puzzle were dropping. And the picture they made wasn't only about affairs. It was also about making deals with powerful people. What about Jasmine? She didn't say anything. She didn't write anything. She didn't show off. She let the facts do the talking. And they were talking louder than ever. Panic started to spread via conservative media. Some others tried to stand up for Melania. One host said she's being ruined for being classy and private, but those fortifications started to fall apart when they were put under pressure. Every time someone said no, they got another receipt. A different document. A different voice. And what about Melania? She was gone. 3 engagements were called off. There were reporters all over her Florida mansion, but nothing happened. No comment, just quiet. The story was evolving. People who used to compliment her for her grace and mystery, they moved apart from each other, in a quiet way, with a heavy heart, but in public. And what about Jasmine? She went back to work. No parade, no lap of honor. Just her usual tasks, like going to school board meetings and community food banks. But suddenly everybody could see the difference. An older woman in the library in Mesquite grabbed her hand. She muttered, "You said what needed to be said, and you didn't have to holler to do it. That's what made it stick." Later that day, Kian gave Jasmine another folder. A third person who blew the whistle. This time, it's from a security company in Belgium. More receipts. There are other holes in the story. Jasmine looked down and murmured softly, "She built it all on looks." And it broke in one night. But Jasmine didn't know that this tale had extended beyond Melania. The focus had changed once more, because being brave costs something. And as the truth grows, so do the stakes. 3 weeks after the collapse, with all the commotion, the denials, and the changes to official biography, Jasmine Crockett was no longer just a congresswoman. She had changed into something else. Not a famous person, a sign. A reminder that truth doesn't have to be loud to be heard. And in a Branson, Missouri school gym full of folding chairs and families, an old guy came up during the Q&A and asked a question that Jasmine would never forget. "Would you like to move on to the last arc, the power shift?" This is where Jasmine's silent fight becomes a political movement, and the institutions that used to ignore her now have to face the truth. The man carefully got up from his folding chair and stated, "I've always voted Republican." His voice wasn't angry, it was steady. But you looked that woman in the eye and stated the truth when no one else would. "I don't agree with all of your politics, but that took guts, and that matters." The applause didn't go off. It started off gently, slow. A wave of actual admiration spread through the room. This was not a show, it was an award. Jasmine Crockett expressed what most people were too scared to say, and now they were paying attention. As they stepped away from the stage lights, Jasmine turned to her chief of staff, Kian, who was backstage. "It's not about Melania anymore." Kian nodded. It never was. And he was right. Even if the headlines were full of scandal, treachery, and collapse, something calmer and stronger was building underneath. People weren't shocked by Jasmine's rise to fame. People were talking about her because they hadn't seen somebody stand in the fire and not blink in years. Yes, the backlash was still going on. Some cable hosts kept saying she was a troublemaker, a separator, even a traitor. But the sound was quieter now. People were watching, not for the show, but to see what she would do next. Jasmine spoke with a group of single women in Topeka, Kansas, who had set up their own child care swap system with no money, no aid from the government, and just the will of the community. They didn't ask about Zurich, or Marbella, or secret trip journals. They asked her something far more human. How do we keep people like you from being drowned out? Jasmine didn't hold back. "You keep talking about more than just the scandal," she replied. "You keep pushing for better. That's how we make a moment into a movement." And they trusted her. She wasn't just talking, she was showing up. Her ratings of approval slowly went up, first in her own district, then in the ones next door. Young voters in particular started to see her as the one who didn't give up. Students in law school wanted her notes from the hearing. Her speeches were referenced in college forums. Podcasts played her interviews over and again like protest songs. One line in particular became famous. It was when she first met with journalist Darlene Rowe. Jasmine had responded, "You don't break systems by yelling at them. You break them by teaching people how they operate in the first place." Not only did the line go viral, but it also was painted on the side of a building in Fresno. No sign, no tag, the truth, in big, bold, white letters. And she still didn't put the spotlight on herself. She didn't sign a book deal, did not go after a talk show tour. She just kept going to work. in a quiet way, always. Some Democrats said she was the new face of responsibility. Some people stayed away since they weren't sure how long the moment would endure. Republicans got ready for battle by running attack commercials and making a lot of noise. But every time the talk went off track, someone brought it back to the same undeniable fact. She didn't yell. She had receipts. When the heat hit, she didn't run. And she never got upset. At a press appearance in Philadelphia, a reporter questioned her, "Do you see yourself as the leader of a new political movement?" Jasmine stopped and thought for a moment. "I don't know what to call it," she added. "I just don't want to see good people get in trouble for saying what everyone else is too scared to say. That's fine if that's a movement." The next day, more than 30 national newspapers used that quote as a headline. But the moment that would define her and bind everything together didn't come on stage or in front of a podium. There were no flash bulbs or national cameras involved. It took place in a Fort Worth community center that wasn't very busy. Jasmine had come to a basic roundtable with high school students and local volunteers who were working on community projects. There were no signs. There were only metal seats, cold coffee, and open talk. About halfway through, a girl who was approximately 17 raised her hand. She questioned, "How do you keep doing this when everyone is trying to tear you apart?" Jasmine took her time answering. She simply looked around the room and said, "Can someone record this?" They put a phone on top of several books. No filtering. No preparation. Her voice was all there was, low, steady, and sincere. "I didn't get into politics to fight with anyone in the public eye," Jasmine stated. "I came to fight for schools and working people, people who never get to go into the rooms where decisions are made. But when you're in those rooms, you can see how much of it is based on faking. Acting like you didn't hear what you heard. Acting like the truth will come out eventually." She stopped for a moment. Her voice didn't get louder, but her words hit harder than a shout. Eventually is too late for too many people. She moved forward. "People ask me how I keep going, and it's not because I'm brave. Because I'm tired. I'm sick of seeing people lie and win. I'm sick of seeing the people who speak up lose everything. I made a choice. I wasn't going to whisper if I was going to be in the room. I was going to say something." And she did. No insults. Without any drama. Just the truth. You lose friends. You get threats. People call you all kinds of names. But I do sleep at night. I look my mom in the eye. And when I'm in a setting like this, I know I didn't squander my voice. After that, she looked at the girl who had inquired. "Don't wait till you're comfortable to talk. Talk when it counts. Even if your voice shakes. Even if your hands do too. Someone is watching you and thinks, if she can say it, maybe I can too." The video was 4 minutes and 12 seconds long. Kian posted it straight from the parking lot without making any changes. "This is what leadership looks like" was the only caption. It had 12 million views by the time the sun came up. It was shown at high schools. Veterans shared it again. It became a rallying cry on TikTok. YouTube channels used it in their essays. It didn't spread because it was too loud. It spread because it was easy to see. It reminded them of something we all forget in the noise. Being a leader isn't about having power. It's about what you say when no one else is telling you what to say. There was no answer from Melania Trump. No interviews. No comments. Her lawyers discreetly dropped the threats of a lawsuit, and eventually, investigative reports proved everything. Every trip receipt, every shell business, and every rumor Jasmine had brought to light. But Jasmine didn't celebrate her win. She passed 2 laws. One about being honest about travel. One about revealing lobbying. They weren't very pretty, but they were important. What about that Fort Worth student? She sent Jasmine a note. She said she had applied for a civic leadership scholarship in Washington. She stated she wasn't terrified anymore because of what one woman said in one room with no script. Talk when it counts, even if your voice shakes. That wasn't simply advice. It left a mark. If this story made you think or feel something, don't scroll down. Tell others about it. Sign up. Make someone else feel like they matter. This isn't just about the news. It's about what we do next.